Sergeant Jonas Rhane had seen death many times before, but nothing compared to the death that came from the stars. The dropship was spinning, alarms blaring, fire licking through the hull. He gripped the control yoke with bloodied hands as the frozen surface of Erevos rushed toward him. The planet's surface was a mirror of ice and shadow, a frozen wasteland that reflected the dying light of a shattered sun. The impact came like thunder. Metal screamed. The ship tore through the snow, plowing across the plains until it shattered against jagged ice ridges. Silence followed, thick and absolute. Jonas woke inside twisted wreckage. The crash had torn through his armor, cracked his visor, and scattered debris across a white desert that stretched to the horizon. His comms were dead. The air outside shimmered with static energy, every breath biting deep into his lungs. Erevos was not just cold. It was alive with radiation and storms that seemed to whisper across the ice. He crawled from the wreckage, his body aching, vision blurred. The storm was closing in again, dark clouds twisting with flashes of crimson lightning. His HUD flickered. Temperature warnings screamed in red. He could not survive long in the open. He began to walk. Every step was agony, the snow rising to his knees, the wind clawing at his armor like a living thing. The aurora above flickered red and violet, strange and unnatural. The planet seemed haunted by its own light. Hours passed. Or maybe days. The concept of time dissolved beneath exhaustion. His oxygen was dropping, his strength fading. Then, through the chaos of the storm, he saw something impossible, a glow. At first he thought it was another hallucination, a dying soldier's dream. But as he trudged closer, he realized it was real. A black structure rose from the snow, massive and ancient, carved from a crystal-like material that caught the crimson aurora and burned from within. Its towers reached toward the sky like frozen claws. He stumbled toward it. The gates of the structure were half buried, their surface carved with symbols that pulsed faintly when he approached. The moment he touched them, the air shifted. The storm outside vanished. He stepped inside. The silence was complete. The air was still, heavy with age. He walked down a vast corridor lined with statues, tall, graceful figures with long limbs and elegant faces, all frozen mid-motion as if caught in the act of prayer. Each statue bore fangs. At the end of the hall, he saw her, a figure sitting upon a throne of black crystal, motionless yet alive. Her skin glowed faintly violet under the aurora's light, her long silver hair flowing like liquid metal down her shoulders. Her armor seemed fused to her body, grown rather than forged. And when her eyes opened, scarlet and bright, they pierced through him like fire through glass. Jonas froze. She rose slowly, and the temperature in the hall seemed to rise with her. The air trembled as her gaze met his. There was no sound, yet he heard her voice. It did not enter his ears, it entered his mind. In that single moment he understood what she was. She was not human. She was not alive in the way he understood life. She was something older, something beautiful, and something very, very dangerous. The air inside the temple thickened, charged with an unseen weight that pressed down upon Jonas's lungs. He felt his pulse hammering against her touch, yet his mind remained frozen somewhere between fear and disbelief. Her hand lingered over his chest, not in threat, but in strange reverence. Then she stepped back, the light in her eyes dimming as if a decision pained her. "You should not have come here," Velyra said softly. "Erevos devours those who linger. Even the air hungers." Jonas steadied himself, forcing his trembling fingers to tighten around his knife. "I didn't exactly plan the trip." Her head tilted slightly, curiosity flickering across her face. "Your voice, your defiance. You are different from the ones who burned my skies." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" Her gaze drifted toward the ceiling, where faint streaks of energy pulsed through the crystal veins like veins of living blood. "When your kind came long ago, you called it war. My people called it extinction. We were the Nocturii, children of twilight, sustained by the lifeblood of the stars. You thought us monsters." Jonas's breath caught. He had heard whispers in military archives, unverified reports of energy-feeding entities destroyed in a cleansing campaign centuries ago. "The kind of story you dismissed as propaganda. You're saying, your people fed on living things?" he asked cautiously. She turned her gaze back to him, unashamed. "We did, not from cruelty but from design. We were bound to energy as humans are bound to air. Without it, we wither. Without it, I will die. Her voice softened, carrying a note of exhaustion that sounded older than time itself. I have starved for 300 years, Jonas swallowed. The silence stretched between them like a blade. Then why haven't you taken you? She finished for him. Because if I do, you will not survive. Her words echoed off the walls, low and haunting. But there is another way, she said. A covenant older than this world. It binds two beings, body and soul, allowing one to share life force without destruction. It is the only way I can feed without killing you. Jonas stared at her, mind racing. You mean marriage? Velyra's lips curved faintly. You may call it that. The covenant of union. To your kind, perhaps it is ritual. To mine, it is life. Two become one energy. If I feed without it, you die. If I form the bond, we both live, forever changed. He took a step back, every instinct screaming at him to run. But behind him was only ice and death. His ship was destroyed, his beacon too weak to reach orbit. Outside, the storm would tear him apart before nightfall. He looked up at her, this alien queen, this relic of a forgotten empire. She stood motionless, waiting, her expression unreadable. Yet behind the cold poise, he saw something else, a faint tremor of hope. You want me to agree to this? He said. To bind myself to you. I offer you survival, she whispered. And I ask nothing you will not give willingly. Refuse, and your blood will feed Erevos instead. Jonas's breath shook as he weighed his choices. To die frozen and alone in a wasteland, or surrender to something ancient and unknown. He sheathed his knife. What happens if I say yes? Velyra's eyes brightened just slightly. Then you will live. You will feel my hunger and my warmth. Her steps were silent as she approached. When her hand touched his face, it was like being brushed by the surface of ice that remembered heat. Her breath trembled against his skin. Do you consent, human? Jonas closed his eyes. Every nerve screamed that he was making a mistake. But something deeper, some quiet pull he could not explain, urged him forward. Yes, he said. The temple reacted instantly. The air thrummed with power. Symbols flared alive along the floor, casting them in red and violet light. The glyphs formed a circle around them, humming like a living pulse. Velyra's voice deepened, carrying a tone that resonated through his bones. Then it begins. She drew closer, pressing her forehead to his. The warmth of her breath mingled with his. The markings climbed their bodies like light given shape. When her lips brushed his neck, he tensed, but the sensation that followed was not pain. It was fire and frost entwined. A rush of energy flooded through him, coursing in both directions. His body trembled as vision struck him. Flashes of stars dying, worlds burning, 1,000 screams of her people fading into silence. He felt her grief, her loneliness, her desperate hunger to feel alive again. Her fangs sank gently into his skin, and his vision went white. Yet instead of death, he felt warmth spread through his veins, a strange equilibrium of taking and giving. When it ended, he fell to his knees. The glyphs dimmed. She stood over him, eyes soft, voice barely audible. It is done. Jonas looked up. The wound on his neck had already sealed. Her color looked different now, brighter, more alive. He could feel something inside him, a faint echo of her heartbeat matching his own. What did you do to me? He asked. She reached out and placed her hand gently against his chest. I gave you part of my soul, she said, and you gave me yours. Outside, the storm roared across Erevos. But within the obsidian temple, two beings from opposite worlds had become one, and neither yet understood the price of what they had begun. When Jonas woke again, the storm had quieted. Faint light filtered through cracks in the temple walls, painting ribbons of dull crimson over the icy floor. For a moment he thought he was dead. But the steady rhythm in his chest, and the faint second heartbeat echoing with it, told him otherwise. He sat up slowly. His wounds had closed, his body felt lighter, but his mind was heavy with something he could not name. His memories flickered like old film, his crash, the storm, the alien queen. Then he saw her. Velyra stood near the temple's entrance, watching the horizon where the endless aurora shimmered in silence. The crimson light rippled over her skin, turning the pale violet into something ethereal. Her silver hair drifted with every unseen current, and her armor, grown from her very body, glowed faintly with the same energy that now pulsed through him. When she turned, her gaze found him immediately. For the first time, her expression softened, as if she were uncertain what to say. "You survived," she said quietly. Jonas forced a weak smile. "Barely." She stepped closer, her presence unsettling but strangely comforting. "The bond holds. You are connected to me now. I can feel your pulse as if it were my own." Jonas swallowed. "And I can feel you." It was true. Deep within his chest, beneath his own heartbeat, something thrummed, a rhythm that was not his but hers. He could sense her emotions faintly, like whispers through a wall. A lingering sadness, a hollow ache, and beneath it, warmth, cautious, unfamiliar, but growing. Velyra gestured toward the chamber's edge. "Come, there is food. Not of your world, but it will sustain you." He followed her to a small basin carved into the floor. The liquid inside shimmered like molten glass. She poured it into a crystal cup and handed it to him. It tasted faintly metallic, yet strangely invigorating. "It will restore your strength," she said. "The covenant allows your body to process the energy of Erevos as mine does." "You are changing slowly." Jonas studied his reflection in the cup. His eyes glinted faintly red in the dim light. "Changing into what?" "Something between us," she said simply. The days that followed blurred together in a quiet rhythm. The storm outside never ceased, but inside, the temple became a fragile world of its own, silent, cold yet alive. Jonas explored its vast halls, each one carved from dark crystal that hummed with faint energy. Statues of winged figures lined the corridors, their faces sorrowful, their bodies cracked from age. He asked her who they were, and she told him they were her kin, the Noctiri nobles who once ruled the night. They fed from the stars, she said as they stood before one statue. They believed the universe itself was a living being. Every breath, every light, every death, all part of a single pulse. When humans came, they saw us as predators, not as children of the same creation. Jonas looked up at the statue's hollow eyes. "And they destroyed you?" She nodded slowly. "Until only I remained." Her voice trembled slightly, and for the first time, Jonas saw something fragile beneath her regal calm. Exhaustion, grief, maybe even guilt. That night, he dreamed. He saw fragments of her memories, a city of silver towers beneath eternal dusk, rivers of starlight flowing through glass streets, laughter echoing among alien children. Then fire, human ships burning the sky, her people screaming as crimson light engulfed them. He woke with his heart racing, and she was standing beside him. "You saw," she said. He nodded. "Your memories." She knelt beside him, her expression unreadable. "The bond shares more than energy. It shares thought, feeling, and memory. You will see me as I am, not as I wish to be seen. Then you'll see me too," he said quietly. "I already do." Something changed between them after that. The distance began to dissolve. She started speaking more, telling him about the constellations above Erevos, about her people's rituals, about the beauty that once existed before war. In turn, he told her about Earth, oceans and sunlight, the scent of rain, the sound of laughter. One night she laughed, truly laughed. It was soft, startled, as though she had forgotten how. The sound echoed through the temple like a song that had not been heard in centuries. Jonas smiled. "You should laugh more often." Her gaze met his, and something unspoken passed between them. The bond pulsed warmly, a shared heartbeat that no longer felt foreign. Time became fluid after that. The storm outside never stopped, but the temple no longer felt like a tomb. It felt alive. Yet beneath the quiet, Jonas sensed an unease in Velyra. She often stared toward the horizon, as if waiting for something. Her voice would drift into silence mid-sentence, and her eyes would lose their focus. One evening, as the aurora burned a deeper crimson than ever before, she whispered, "They are coming." Jonas frowned. "Who?" "The ones who burned the skies before. Your people. I can feel their presence through the bond, orbiting above. They will come for you, and if they find me—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Jonas looked out through the cracks in the temple walls, watching the faint glimmer of distant stars. Somewhere out there, a rescue team had detected his signal. Somewhere out there, the past was about to catch up with them. He turned back to her. Then we faced them together. Her expression softened. You would fight your own kind? He hesitated for only a moment. I already made my choice. The aurora flared violently, painting the world in blood-red light. The temple walls trembled. In the distance, faint rumbling filled the air, the unmistakable sound of ships breaking through Erevos' atmosphere. Velyra's eyes narrowed, a mix of sorrow and resolve. Then the covenant will be tested. The next morning the storm was restless. The air trembled with sound that did not belong to Erevos. A low metallic hum that grew louder as the crimson aurora thrashed above the temple. Jonas stepped to the entrance, his boots crunching against frozen stone. In the far distance, through the swirling snow, he saw the dark shapes of descending dropships cutting through the sky. Their engines screamed against the silence of the world. They were human. Velyra stood beside him, her expression calm, but her eyes shadowed by something deeper than fear. She had known this moment would come. They have come for you, she said quietly. Jonas felt his stomach tighten. No. They have come for us. The words hung in the cold air, a fragile promise swallowed by the wind. He could already imagine what his commanders would say. Rescue the sergeant. Terminate the alien. To them, Velyra would never be anything more than a remnant of a threat they thought long buried. The reports would be the same as they always were. No survivors, no witnesses, no questions. He turned back toward her. We need to move. There must be another way out of here. There is none, she said. This temple is a prison. It was built to contain me. The exit's sealed long ago. I could not leave, even if I wanted to. Jonas clenched his jaw. Then they will have to come through me. Velyra's eyes softened. You would stand against your own people for me. I do not see them as my people anymore. Outside, the first ship landed, its engines melting the snow into black slush. Jonas could see armored figures moving through the blizzard, soldiers with pulse rifles and scanners, their visors glowing blue in the dark. He recognized the insignia, the Galactic Vanguard. His own division. He knew their orders would be clear: capture if possible, kill if necessary. And when they discovered what he had done, the covenant he had formed, there would be no mercy for either of them. Velyra moved to the center of the temple. Her body began to glow faintly as streams of energy gathered around her. The ground vibrated. If they attack, I cannot hold back my nature. The bond will draw my instincts to protect you. You may not survive what follows. Jonas loaded his rifle, the weapon trembling slightly in his hands. I survived worse. She looked at him with something like sorrow. You have not seen what I become when I unleash what I am. The sound of heavy boots echoed down the corridors. Shadows moved against the crimson light. The temple's great doors groaned as something on the other side tried to force them open. Then came a voice through the static of a loudspeaker. Sergeant Jonas Rhane, this is Commander Heller. You are under rescue protocol. Step outside and identify yourself. The creature inside is to be contained. Jonas stared toward the doors. His name, his rank. The weight of everything he had once been came crashing back. The soldier, the survivor, the obedient man. He looked back at Velyra. Her eyes glowed faintly red now, her expression unreadable. They are calling you home, she said. He shook his head. Home is gone. The doors shuddered violently. With a deafening crack, they split open, shards of black crystal exploding inward. The soldiers flooded in, weapons raised, lights cutting through the haze. Target located, one of them shouted. Energy signature detected. High concentration. Permission to engage. Engage! The commander's voice roared through the comms. The first shot rang out. Jonas fired back without hesitation, the recoil jolting through his body. Plasma bolts hissed across the chamber, striking the walls and bursting into flashes of light. Velyra moved like a shadow, swift, silent, almost graceful. Her energy flared, forming a barrier that rippled with crimson patterns. Bullets dissolved before they reached her. The soldiers fell back, shouting orders, confusion breaking through discipline. What the hell is that thing? She is protecting you, Jonas thought, realizing it through the pulse of their bond. He could feel her strain, every surge of energy echoing through his own body. Jonas, one of the soldiers shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. Stand down! She is manipulating you! That thing is dangerous. Jonas's hands tightened on his rifle. "You do not understand," he said under his breath. "You never did." He moved beside her, firing at the advancing troops. Every step forward felt heavier, as if the bond itself resisted violence, but he pushed through it. When one of the soldiers aimed a high-powered plasma grenade at Velyra, Jonas lunged in front of her. The explosion hit his armor and threw him across the floor. Pain shot through every nerve. His chest burned. He could barely breathe. Velyra screamed, a sound that seemed to tear through the fabric of reality itself. The air around her shattered into waves of force. Her wings erupted, not made of flesh, but of pure energy, dark and luminous, stretching wide enough to fill the entire chamber. The soldiers froze in terror. She stepped forward, her voice trembling with fury and grief. "You will not take him from me." The power burst from her like a storm. The floor cracked, the walls split apart, and the soldiers were thrown back as their weapons disintegrated mid-air. The crimson aurora outside flared brighter than ever, swirling into a storm of red light that consumed the sky. Jonas could barely lift his head. Through blurred vision, he saw her standing over him, her energy spiraling out of control. The bond pulsed violently, warning him. She was burning herself out. He tried to reach her. "Velyra, stop!" Her voice trembled as she turned toward him. "If I stop, you die." The words barely reached his ears before his vision dimmed. He felt blood running down his side, warm against the frozen floor. He had been hit. His body was failing. Velyra's wings began to flicker. The energy that had once glowed like fire now faded like smoke. She fell to her knees beside him, her expression full of pain. "No, not like this." Jonas tried to speak, but no sound came. The world blurred around him. He could feel her sorrow through the bond, heavy and suffocating. She pressed her hand over his heart, and the mark of the covenant, faint until now, burned bright against his skin. "Do not leave me," she whispered. The last thing Jonas saw before the darkness claimed him was her face, framed by wings of shadow and light, her tears glowing as they fell. The temple began to crumble around them. The war outside meant nothing now. Only one choice remained, to let go or to finish what they had begun. The light faded from the world. Jonas's heartbeat slowed, echoing weakly in the emptiness. The cold began to creep in again, deeper than before, as if the planet itself was pulling him down into its frozen grave. His vision blurred until he could see nothing but faint shapes and the trembling shadow of Velyra leaning over him. Her hands pressed against his chest, desperate, trembling. "Do not fade," she whispered. The words were almost soundless, carried more through their bond than her lips. "I can fix this. I can give you life. Do not leave me." Jonas tried to answer, but his voice would not come. He could only feel the slow, steady slipping of everything that was him, the warmth, the light, the will to move. It was fading like dying embers. Velyra's power flickered violently, her wings collapsing into shards of energy. She could feel it too, the bond weakening, their connection fraying apart. He had given too much of himself in that fight. The covenant was incomplete, and without completion, both would die. Her breath shook. "Forgive me," she said, and her eyes glowed bright red once more. The aura around her flared, consuming the temple in blinding light. The surviving soldiers outside fell to their knees, shielding their eyes as waves of crimson power rolled through the ruins. Inside, she pulled Jonas into her arms. His body was cold, his pulse faint. She pressed her forehead to his, her tears freezing as they fell. "You gave me your life when I asked for your trust. Now I will give you mine." The glyphs on the temple floor reignited, swirling into the same ancient pattern that had once joined them. But this time they pulsed faster, wilder, drawn by her desperation. She began to chant the words of the old covenant, her voice trembling under the weight of emotion and energy. Jonas's heartbeat slowed further, and then stopped. Velyra's cry tore through the air, raw and heart-wrenching. For a moment the universe seemed to pause. Then, in the stillness, she pressed her lips to his forehead and whispered, "Then I choose you, even in death." Her body erupted with energy. The markings on her arms and chest flared, merging with his. Their bond reignited, pulling them together in a storm of light. Velyra could feel his spirit slipping away, so she poured everything she was into him. Her strength, her essence, her very existence. The covenant demanded equal exchange. For him to live, she would have to surrender all that remained of herself. Outside, the sky above Erevos split open. The crimson aurora spiraled into a vortex of light, turning the eternal night into burning day. The ruins trembled. The snow melted into rivers of silver. Inside the temple, Velyra screamed as the last of her energy surged into Jonas. The air burned with raw power. Every crystal wall reflected their fusion, human and Noctiri merging, dissolving boundaries of species and time. Then the light went out. Silence. When the echoes faded, the storm outside had died. The soldiers who had survived stared in disbelief. The entire temple was gone, replaced by a crater of molten glass and a strange warmth spreading through the once dead air. And at the center of it, movement. Jonas gasped and drew in a breath. His eyes opened slowly. The air no longer burned cold. The pain that had torn through his body was gone. He sat up weakly, his vision clearing to see the faint shimmer of energy hanging over him. Velyra knelt beside him, but she looked different. Her once pale skin now glowed faintly gold, the hue of warmth instead of frost. Her eyes, once crimson and predatory, were now deep amethyst, calm, alive, human and alien at once. Jonas reached for her hand. It was warm. "You are alive," she whispered, disbelief trembling in her voice. He nodded weakly. "So are you." Her lips quivered. "No, not as before. The curse is broken. I am no longer what I was. The hunger is gone. The darkness ended." He stared at her, trying to understand. "How?" "When I gave you my life, I completed the covenant," she said softly. "The bond no longer takes, it gives. We are one now. Human and Noctiri, life and death. Two halves of a single being." Jonas looked around them. The temple was gone, reduced to dust and light. The endless night of Erevos had dimmed, the crimson aurora replaced by faint gold on the horizon. The eternal storm had broken. He stood still unsteady and helped her rise. As their hands met, warmth surged between them, not as energy but as life. The air around them seemed to breathe again. The once dead wind carried sound, faint, distant dripping water, as if the ice itself was beginning to melt. Velyra looked toward the horizon, tears glimmering in her new eyes. "Erevos is waking," she whispered. "The curse that held it in twilight was tied to my people, to my hunger. With it gone, the planet can live again." Jonas followed her gaze. The first rays of true light in millennia broke across the frozen world, spilling gold and silver over the ice fields. For the first time, Erevos had dawn. Behind them, the human soldiers who had survived the storm stood in silent awe. Their weapons lowered, their helmets removed. The warmth on their faces told them this was no illusion. None of them dared to fire again. Velyra turned toward them, her expression calm. She no longer looked like a queen of death, but a being reborn. Part alien, part human, something new entirely. Jonas took her hand. "What happens now?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Now we live," she said simply. "Not as hunter and prey, not as soldier and queen, but as one." The wind brushed their faces. Above them, the once bleeding sky faded into soft gold. Erevos, the world of endless night, had begun to thaw. Jonas looked at Velyra again. Her smile was faint, but real. Not the sharp smirk of a predator, but the gentle curve of peace. "Then let us see what this new world becomes," he said. Together, they began to walk. Each step left prints that glowed faintly behind them, a trail of light across the snow. Far above, the human ships turned silently in orbit, recording what they could not understand. Their sensors detected impossible readings, the birth of light on a dead planet. And from that moment, a new legend began to spread across the stars, of the last vampire queen who chose love over hunger, and the human soldier who gave his life to save her. The story of the covenant, of two souls who defied death and brought dawn to a world of eternal darkness. The storm had passed. What once was a land of shadows now shimmered under a newborn sky. The light was soft, pale gold, stretching across the frozen plains like the first breath of a long-forgotten dream. The planet Erevos, once a grave of gods and ghosts, was alive again. Jonas stood at the edge of a ridge, the wind brushing through his hair. The horizon blazed with dawn, not the crimson glow of auroras, but true sunlight. He felt its warmth on his face, gentle and real. After endless cold and fear, it felt like forgiveness. Behind him, Velyra approached in silence. Her steps were light against the snow that was already beginning to melt. She wore no crown now. Her silver hair glimmered in the sun, and her eyes, no longer haunted red, reflected the sky like liquid amethyst. Jonas turned to her and smiled faintly. "It is beautiful," he said. Velyra nodded, her gaze distant. "It feels strange. I have lived through centuries of night. I had forgotten what light looked like." They stood together, watching the ice crack and water flow freely for the first time in ages. The planet was breathing. "The Covenant changed more than us," Jonas murmured. "It changed this world." Velyra's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "The Noctiri curse was bound to Erevos. We were its keepers and its prisoners. When the curse ended through the Covenant, the planet was released as well. It will take years, perhaps centuries, but Erevos will bloom again." Jonas looked down at his hands. The faint glow of the Covenant still pulsed beneath his skin, a golden shimmer where the bond ran deepest. "And us, what are we now?" Velyra turned toward him. "We are not gods. We are not monsters. We are both, but neither. You are human, but more. I am Noctiri, but free. Together we are the bridge between light and shadow." Her words hung in the air, gentle yet powerful. Jonas could feel her thoughts through their bond, calm, warm, and alive. No hunger, no pain, just quiet peace. For a moment, he thought of the soldiers who had come to rescue him, those who had seen the explosion, who would return to tell their stories. He imagined the confusion, the fear, the disbelief. They would not understand. But perhaps they did not need to. He reached for her hand. "Will they come back?" "Perhaps," she said softly, "but not as enemies. This world is no longer a threat. It is a beginning." They stood there for a long while, watching as the light spread. The black temple that had once stood in ruin was gone, its remnants buried beneath the snow. In its place, flowers of frost began to bloom, delicate crystal shapes that shimmered in the sunlight, as if the world itself was remembering beauty. Velyra turned to Jonas and whispered, "Do you hear it?" Jonas listened. At first only the wind, then, faintly, the trickle of thawing rivers, the soft hum of life returning. "It sounds like a heartbeat," he said quietly. Velyra smiled. "It is Erevos. It remembers us." They began to walk together across the softening snow, their footprints glowing faintly behind them, golden against the white. The planet responded to their steps, gentle vibrations in the ground, light spreading through the cracks. As they walked, Jonas spoke again. "You said your people were gone, that you were the last." She nodded. "I was. But through the Covenant, through you, perhaps the Noctiri will live on, not as they were, but as they should have been." "And humanity?" Jonas asked. "We'll learn," she said. "Someday they will know that peace does not always come from conquest, but from connection." They reached a cliff overlooking a vast valley, once frozen solid, now glimmering with flowing streams and glints of color beneath the melting ice. Jonas took a deep breath, feeling life in the air for the first time since the crash. Velyra turned to him. "You could leave," she said softly. "When they return for you, you could go back." Jonas looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head. "I already did leave once, from everything I thought I knew." "I am staying," she smiled faintly, and the light seemed to brighten around them. "Then this world will have its first dawn, and its first guardians." Jonas wrapped his arm gently around her as they watched the sun rise fully over Erevos. It painted the sky in shades of gold and violet, the colors of both their worlds united. The warmth reached them slowly, steady and sure, melting away the last traces of the storm. For the first time, Velyra closed her eyes, not to dream of loss or hunger, but of peace, Jonas whispered almost to himself. "The night is over." Velyra opened her eyes and met his. "No," she said softly. "The night was never our enemy. It was only waiting for dawn." And as they stood together beneath the first sunrise Erevos had seen in thousands of years, two figures, human and alien, light and shadow, became the first legend of a new age. Across the stars, stories would spread of the human who crash-landed on a dead world, and the last vampire queen who gave up immortality for love. They would call it the Night of the Covenant.